Hi, Chris Muller again, Chapter 16. Barney had gotten so little from Maud that he asked me to try. He thought she was hiding something. I thought she was just being Maud. She is an outspoken advocate of every human being's right to health, outspoken about a lot of things, but can also be silent when she feels she should. Maud has served as the secretary of the board that ran Doctores Fronterizos during the time of the trouble with Norma and Lil. Like Miriam, she had staunchly defended my mother and the organization. Maud is an attractive woman in her late 30s who is passionate about hiking, biking, and cats, in addition to our community's health and well-being. She is a writer, a good one, not to say she's famous yet. When I stopped at her office, she was expecting me and opened the door before I knocked. "Hi, Margarita, come in." She gave me a hug. "Hi, Maud. How's it going?" "Great." Flowers and colorful Mexican talavera pottery bloomed in a variety of bright colors among the desert plants that dotted her yard. Two friendly cats greeted me as I entered, winding themselves around my legs. A smaller one peered from under the desk, reserving judgment about the visitor. I tried to coax her out, but she wasn't convinced. Maud pulled a chair away from her desk and indicated that I should sit, and plopped onto a footstool nearby and looked up at me. She swatted her unruly chestnut hair away from her face without lasting effect. This must be serious," she said. "You're wearing your uniform." "I usually wear my uniform when I work." "You look very professional." "Thank you. As I said on the phone, I want to talk about Norma's murder." "You're really trying to find out who iced that old Barker?" "Yes, it's my job." "But you don't personally give a shit, do you?" "My personal feelings don't have any bearing. Besides, I believe that murder is wrong, Maud. There's a reason there's a law against it. You know what the good old boys of Texas say." "What's that?" "Sometimes a son of a bitch just needs killing." I laughed. "Granted. And Norma was pushing her luck. They haven't hauled your mother off yet?" "Well, not yet." "Hey, I'm just messing with you. Steph would never kill anyone, no matter how many times she might have done it in her dreams. God knows we all wanted to get rid of that Barker. Your mom is a healer, not a murderer." "I can't imagine my mom killing anyone." "Nah, she never would. Hey, you want something to drink? Juice? Soda?" I declined her offer, and she asked, "Well, what do you need from me?" "I have to ask this for the record. Did you kill her?" "No, I did not." "Well, that's a relief. If I had, would you take me in?" "Yes, Maud, I would. Where were you on Saturday evening?" "I was home watching television with my husband. We went to bed about 11 or so. Neither of us snuck out to kill Norma." "Maud, who do you think would have wanted Norma dead?" "Anybody who knew her, I'd expect." "Yeah, that's the general consensus. It's a crying shame this didn't happen before she got involved with our project. It would have saved us all that hell. I guess it sounds cold, and I know it's not polite to speak ill of the dead, but she was the biggest barking ass munch I ever knew. If I had to guess, I'd say Stanner. Who to blame him? And frankly, I hope he gets away with it. I've thought about it, and Miriam and I have talked about it too. If it wasn't Stanner, well, then maybe it was someone from her past. I'd bet you $1,000,000 she'd pulled this kind of stunt before. I believe she'd had practice, don't you?" "It seems like it." "Her killer might never be found." Maud thought for a moment. "If I were you, Miss Deputy Sheriff, I wouldn't lose a minute of sleep over it." "I haven't, but I do have a job to do. The sheriff expects this murder to be solved. She needed killing, and somebody had the guts to do it, and that's what I have to say about it." I had to laugh. So that's your official statement? Yep, that's it. Hey, if you figure out who done it, would you scoop me? Sure, if you'll write the truth about Norma and what she tried to do to Mom and Doctores Fronterizos. You got it. Whole truth and nothing but, and happy to do it. Later, I was seated in my overstuffed chair with my feet on the edge of the desk and notepad in my hand. I was perusing my hill and wondering why our puzzle wasn't coming together. It felt like we only had some of the pieces. In contrast, things on the hill were in perfect order. Barney ducked through the doorway and stood over me with his hands on his hips. You're not fooling anybody with that notepad. Let me see what you got. I handed it to him. He read it. That's pitiful. Yes, it is. What are we missing, Barney? He sat down on the edge of the desk. I hoped it would hold up. It was a cheap piece of county furniture that probably been around since my parents were babies. What'd you get from Maud? Nothing. Her husband is her alibi. I don't think she's hiding anything. Her only suggestion, other than Stanner, is someone from Norma's past. I asked about his interview with Ray Jasper, the only male board member. He was, in fact, still on the board of directors. Ray says your mother is innocent of the murder, just like she was innocent of the stealing and mismanagement. He made it sound like Norma stabbed herself to make Stephanie look bad. I laughed. He's a little sweet on Mom, I think. He thought Norma was mental and never hated her, he claims. But like the others, he thinks we're wasting our time looking for the killer. She was mental, but that didn't stop me from hating her. Well, maybe you're a lot more callous than sweet, sensitive Ray. Does he have an alibi? Not a provable one. He was in bed, sleeping, he says. Too bad he and your mother weren't together. They could vouch for each other. She better never hear you say something like that. Ray thinks Stanner did it. He says he's a good man, but Norma slowly pushed him to it. Highly possible. That woman could have pushed the Pope into suicide at the altar of the Vatican. Your opinion. Granted. I don't know the Pope. He may be stronger-willed than I think. Barney gave me an exasperated look. What is it you're looking at out there? Are there naked men running around or what? Sadly, no. In fact, there are no men. I'm watching a red-tailed hawk hunting. She's made several strikes and has come up with nothing so far. Sounds a little like us, he said. I went to re-interview Gabe Stanton, Norma's ex-husband. He didn't have an alibi for the day of the murder and had admitted to Barney that he'd hated Norma. So had I, and I hadn't killed her, so maybe Gabe hadn't either. But he was a key suspect, and the sheriff thought I should talk to him to see if he'd changed his story since his talk with Barney. Gabe lives in one of the refurbished rock houses that are scattered over the hills of the ghost town. It's hard to grasp the fact that hard-working miners once lived in those native stone structures without plumbing, electricity, or any of the things we consider necessary. Most of the houses were built by the ancient art of stacking stones, fitting them together tightly so that no cement or other filler is needed. Gabe's home is reached by a winding, rocky driveway, but the reward is a knock-your-socks view of the area. He was expecting me and was sitting in a webbed lawn chair in front of his place, in the shade, drinking iced tea from a can. According to Barney's interview, Gabe was 42 years old and a master carpenter by trade. I greeted him as I jumped down from the Explorer. He stood and shook my hand, not smiling, but he didn't seem unfriendly. He invited me to call him Gabe. Then he offered me a cold drink, giving me the choice of Pepsi or iced tea. I chose the Pepsi because, well, canned iced tea is a travesty. No way was he a Texan. Beautiful day, he said. Gabe had dark brown hair that stuck out around the edges of a green ball cap and curled up in back. His face was angular, and though not unkind looking, he had a hard look about him. Sure is, I agreed to his comment about the beautiful day. The air was so clear that seldom seen Mexican mountains had come into view, as if they just popped up from the surrounding desert. I took a seat, which he invited me to do with a wave of his hand. I'm sorry to have to bother you again, but I need to clarify a few things. No problem. When Deputy George spoke with you, you indicated you didn't have an alibi for the evening of the murder. Right, well, I was here alone. Am I a serious suspect? He told me you said you didn't get along well with Norma. That's an understatement. I hated her. He looked off in the distance. But I didn't kill her. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he went on. There was a time when I drank a lot and done drugs, and I done some time, but I never killed nobody. I hit Norma once, and that's when she took our boy and said she wasn't coming back. I thought doing time explained the hardened look, not to mention the toll that living with Norma had taken. You're Joey's father. Right. She took him away, and right after that I went to jail on a drug charge. While I was in, she divorced me. I was always in trouble back then, but I cleaned up my act since then, for Joey. And for me too, I guess. I decided I didn't want to spend my life in different prisons while my son grew up with a crazy woman. How long have you lived here? 3 months. I came here 'cause of Joey. I want to be with him, and he wants to be with me. He told his mama he wanted to live with me. I was living in Amarillo at the time, and she said if I lived near her, she'd let him see me more. So here I am. He paused a moment, watching me. Do you know Joey? Yes, he's a fine boy. He looks a lot like you. I'm very proud of him. Do you like living here? Yes and no. The pay sucks, but the place is beautiful. I like the peace and quiet. It's hard to stay sober, though. I attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings when I was locked up and kept going when I got out. He sighed. The loneliness makes it harder, and everybody here drinks, seems like. I nodded. Do you ever go to the AA meetings in Terlingua? Yeah, some. Did you ever go to Norma's when you weren't picking up Joey? Hell no. She was the last woman on earth I'd visit for any reason. I knew Joey was in San Antonio with Stanner. I was supposed to work the weekend, or he'd have been with me. Anyway, I would never see her if it wasn't to pick up Joey. When was the last time you saw Norma? Let's see. I guess that must have been last weekend when I picked up my son. He pushed his cap back. I had to fight to get him, and might not have, except Stanner came in the room and said she had no reason to make him stay home. I never saw him stand up to her like that before. We sat silently for a few moments, sipping from our cans and watching turkey vultures soaring above. Gabe, do you have any idea who killed Norma? No. That other deputy asked me that too. I told him it could have been anybody that knows her. She was a mean, calculating bitch. Everything was about her. She never considered anybody's feelings but her own. No, I said that wrong. It wasn't feelings she had as much as things she wanted. Can you explain what you mean? It was like she was hollow inside. He touched his heart. But she was smart. She figured things out, worked things around so she got what she wanted. He stood, suddenly, agitated. I tried to picture him stabbing Norma in the heart. He seemed like a man that could do it. I don't know what it is she wanted except to make other people miserable. How old was Joey when you went to prison? About 18 months. And how long were you in? 20 months. I was sentenced to 24 months, but was released early. I kept my nose clean and never caused no trouble. When I got out, I was divorced and Norma and Joey were gone. Nobody knew where they'd gone to. I found her through her brother, who lived in Houston at the time. She was in El Paso, homeless. That made two of us. What happened after that? Well, Norma went to a shelter for a while, then to live with her parents. They only took her in because of the children. They sort of gave up on her long ago. Why is that? She left home real young. Nobody could tell her a thing. She hitched to El Paso and went wild on the streets. Caused all kinds of trouble and whatnot. The police sent her back to her parents twice, but they couldn't do nothing with her. Each time she was sent home, she'd just leave again and go back to living on the streets. I recall a story she told my mom that went like that. For a while, she was with an alcoholic musician named Trent, right? Right, and they had Richie. Did she ever marry Trent? No, they lived together a while. I always thought she got with him just 'cause he had a place, you know. He was a good guy, trying to go straight, but just couldn't. I know that feeling. He'd make good money playing music and then blow most of it on alcohol and drugs. I'm sure Norma didn't help. She was into drugs and alcohol back then. But didn't she go back to school? Yeah, Norma was smart. It was heart she lacked. Eventually she got back into the drug scene again, and that's when she met me. We were no good for each other, but since when does that stop people? No kidding. Barney told me you said Trent died in an auto accident. Yeah, a few years ago. Everybody thought he was probably driving drunk, but actually a drunk hit him and killed him instantly. He'd finally gone straight and was starting to get somewhere with his music. Sucks, huh? Yes, it does. I can't think about it or I'll be drinking again. I get to thinking, here I am, not drinking, going to AA and trying to do right, and something else will kill me. Makes it all seem so futile. We laughed. I wanted to ask him how he'd given up drinking, the nitty-gritty details. I didn't dare. He had said Alcoholics Anonymous, but how could a deputy go to AA in a town where nothing shared was kept secret for 10 minutes? After some small talk, Gabe asked, "Do you have any leads?" Nothing much. I guess you can't talk about what you know. Maybe Stanner had her killed. She had some money her parents left her. I bet she was surprised as hell they left her anything. I couldn't believe it when I heard, after the way she treated them all those years. He stepped into the house for more iced tea. You want anything? No, thanks. When he got settled again, I said, Norma told my mother she and her parents had come to terms, more or less, not long ago. Well, that would explain it. He took a long drink of the tea. I hope that's true for their sakes. They were good people and didn't deserve the hell Norma gave them. What about the life insurance angle, he asked. What life insurance? Oh, I'd forgotten about it. Might not even be true. I just now thought about it. Norma mentioned a few months ago that she and Stanner had to get physicals because they were buying a lot of life insurance. Did she say how much? I think it was $1 million on each of them. They wanted to make sure their kids would be cared for and could go to college if something happened to one of them. That seemed like a lot, and that alone didn't prove anything, but it was another lead that might go somewhere. I could hope. Gabe watched me a long while, chewing on his lip, considering something. He finally spilled it. Look, it might help you to know. Well, the truth is, I was here. I wasn't alone. That means you have an alibi. Yeah, but I don't want to say her name. It's lonely here, and I only just got to know her, and that was the first time we ever slept together. I was hoping to do that again, and if I start talking about her, I know she won't ever come back. Look, Gabe, I can make her understand that you need an alibi. You aren't talking for the sake of gossip. Surely she would understand. Maybe you could explain it to her. Of course, I'll leave no doubt in her mind. Well, I'll call and ask her to come over. Judy Rankin was a shy, soft-spoken woman about Gabe's age. I felt sure she wasn't someone he grabbed off the street to tell lies for him. She understood why her statement was important and didn't hesitate to corroborate his story. I made sure she understood that the statement would not be public. She held Gabe's hand as we were talking. No way would she hold his need for an alibi against him. That afternoon, I determined that Norma and Stanner Bates had been considering large life insurance policies, but hadn't gotten around to buying them. I bet Stanner was kicking himself, except he seemed too laid back to kick himself over anything. I also thought that a man who was going to kill his wife would have made sure the $1 million life insurance policy was in place first.